Let's talk about building your founding team. So, if you have a startup, you got to really pay attention to who you're adding to your team. Like, if you're a founder yourself, you got to really think about what kind of skills you're looking for, what kind of assets, right? Those assets can be revenue or it can be money, it can be skills, it can also be a network, okay? So, that's important. So, if you are thinking about building your founding team, you got to proceed strategically to find the right people, especially those folks who have something to actually bring along. Okay, so let's first talk about founder versus co-founder. So if you have a startup and you are thinking about building your founding team, you got to first ask yourself, how many founders do you have? How many founder? How I mean, are you alone or do you have other co-founders? Okay, and so first, it's important to understand that if you are thinking about a founding setup for your startup, you actually have two main types of founding setups, especially when it comes to early stage companies. So when you think about early stage companies, you are thinking about actually the founding father who are gonna help you strengthen strengthen. I mean, I said the founding fathers, but what I mean is that the founding members. Okay, so those are folks who are gonna help you actually strengthen the foundation of your setup. So you have solo founders. That's the first concept when it comes to a founding setup, solo founders. And then you have founding teams. So when you have founding teams, logically you have co-founders, right? You have one or two or three or even 10 co-founders. So entrepreneurship is actually very rewarding, but being a solo founder can also be lonely and stressful, especially if you are in an industry that requires agility, that requires some kind of networking capability, that requires some kind of assertiveness. Okay, so having a co-founder, it can actually help mitigate. Having a co-founder or co-founders can help mitigate that stress and infuse your startup with crucial complementary skills to your own skill set. Right, this is really important from a flexibility point of view, but also from a scalability point of view. So if I were to give you an example of a SaaS company, for example, a SaaS or a tech startup founder who has strong technical coding skills might want a co-founder with a background in finance or operations. So you also have a founder versus a CEO. So a startup founder will often take on the CEO role too, but not always. Founders need to take on the role of visionaries for the business idea and company they started. Generally, the CEO role is best for someone who will be the face of the company, for example, leading sales conversations or investor pitches to VCs, venture capital firms. Okay, and so another key difference is that while the founder of a company never changes, CEOs can come and go and may actually be subject to the whims of the board. So when you think about building your founding team, you have to really understand that, of course, you have to pay attention to the C-suite, right? So when we talk about founders and co-founders, and then we talk about CEOs, the first person in the C-suite is the CEO, of course, right? So C-suite actually is an umbrella term for high level or senior executives with a chief in their title. So when I say chief in their title, it just means those people have decision making capabilities. They are executive, they are at a very executive level. Okay. So filling out the rest of your C suite beyond the CEO role may or may not be necessary. It depends on the niche you're in, it depends on your economic sector, it depends on what kind of funding you have access to. Because if you have to hire a CFO, a CTO, or a COO, you got to have money, right? To actually pay them or even incentivize them with things like equity, for instance. So your hiring needs basically will depend on your company's fundraising stage and overall business needs. So let's first talk about the CFO before we talk about the other executive, because the CFO is one that a lot of folks know. So a CFO oversees finance, accounting, treasury, risk, and investor relations. Okay, you can hire a CFO to help prepare for a new fundraising round, manage cash burn more effectively, or even hitting a certain ARR threshold. So ARR, we're speaking about annual recurring revenue. I just finished a video that talked about the key specifics metrics to pay attention to if you're running a startup. So basically, ARR threshold, for example, it's important when you start. Like if you are paying attention to raising more money. For example, when you start making over 50 million in annual recurring revenue, you are able to tap into a new round of funding. So that's for CFO. Now, what about CTO? So the Chief Technology Officer role is unsurprisingly best for someone with a technical background. So a CTO can help develop your product and tech, ensure product market fit, and identify opportunities for innovation, but also improvement. When it comes to another important member in your C-suite, you are speaking about your COO. So if you think about COO, we are speaking about Chief Operating Officer. This is somebody who has experience when it comes to operations management. Okay, so the role actually involves the management and oversight of day-to-day operations, and the role can also span a variety of departments. It really depends on the kind of niche, but the kind of niche you're in, but also the kind of setup you want your company to have. Okay, so when I say the COO role can span several departments, I'm speaking about HR, I'm speaking about finance. I'm speaking about general operations. Okay, if you have a CFO, then the COO will not actually oversee finance anymore. But if you don't have a COO, then yes. So the COO is actually instrumental in developing and implementing efficient business processes and policies to enhance operational efficiency. So working in tandem with the CEO plays a critical role in translating strategic goals into actionable operational plans, right? Because the CEO actually comes with a big vision, with a big timeline, but the COO is actually tasked with implementing that. So you also have to think about a startup lawyer. So when we speak about building your founding team, you got to think about a lawyer too. So a law firm is one of the first major outside partnerships you will establish as a founder, and you need you need a legal specialist, okay? And it's not one you can source via an online list, Yelp, or even your friends. So while it's good to ask your network, especially any lawyers or founders you may know, it's important to find an experienced team or individual that's comfortable working with startups in all their ambiguity and growing pains, right? As well as the industry your company is entering. Okay, so you need that sort of legal expertise, legal agility, so to speak. So if it's important to understand that the bottom line here is that you want to really mitigate whatever risk is coming your way, and God knows startups actually face a variety of operational risks. Okay, so you got to really anticipate those needs big time. So if you're thinking about building your founding team, it's important to really think about startup advisors. Okay, so advisors are kind of critical for all kinds of startups, not just let's say SaaS companies, or let's say like any startup in any field. You got to have a startup advisor, because sometimes an advisor actually does bring something important to the table, and that's networking. That's just way beyond expertise. Okay, and those advisors are usually very experienced, very senior folks who have an extensive network, and that's the network you want to tap into. That's the network your startup needs. That's the network you need to actually go to the next level, right? So that's really important. So in the startup world, an advisor actually remains a seasoned professional mentor who offers insights and networking opportunities to startup founders and teams. Okay, so an advisor is not going to give you guidance on the day-to-day operations of the firm. They are actually giving you guidance on the big vision, on the big mantra, on the big objectives that your company is actually trying to reach. Okay, so basically, advisors often have extensive experience in the industry and specialized knowledge in areas such as business strategy, technology consulting, marketing strategy, or financial strategy. It really depends on the kind of skill gap you are trying to fill, right? Because based on how your C suite is actually set up, maybe you have a CFO, maybe you have a CTO, but you don't have a COO. Maybe if you don't have a COO, then maybe a startup advisor can fill the operational need, the operational management need to a certain extent. Okay, so if you think about it, if you want, if you want to really have, I would say the big picture here, the role of a startup advisor is to actually provide business advice, serve as a sounding board for your ideas, and give recommendations to improve your startup. They can also introduce you to their network, right, which is really helpful if you are looking for new talent or need guidance when raising capital, especially when you really need capital big time. So if you're thinking about building your founding team, it's important to understand that your startup actually is the sum of all the skill sets that you are bringing to the table. At least at the beginning, at the very beginning, your team is kind of crucial. The kind of team you have is important. Imagine Amazon back in the days, like Amazon 3 months after founding the company, or 6 months after founding the company. Nowadays, all those founding team members are millionaires, or at least multi-millionaires or billionaires, right? But they got to have a certain skill, but also a certain commitment to the firm back in the days. So basically, your human resources are really quite essential. Having like attracting the right people to your firm is quite essential at the very beginning. Okay, so getting compensation and benefits right is actually essential to building company culture and finding talent, because some talents may not be interested in sacrificing like monetary compensation versus equity, for instance. So this is important. So when I say human resources, I'm talking about the head, like the chief, but also the team, right? So whether you have an official head of HR or someone else wearing many hats while your company gets started, the HR role is essential to setting the stage for growth, right? You gotta really have that stage properly set up, at least at the very beginning. So while you're building your founding team, don't forget to build them a compensation plan too, right? You got to really have a compensation plan. Sometimes it's called comp plan. You got to have a comp plan that's really incentivizing, what I call attractive, but also incentivizing. Because see, attractive is to bring them into the firm, but incentivizing is to actually motivate them once they are in the firm. And you got to have a comp plan that's both attractive and incentivizing. So a comp plan is actually a set of guidelines for your company's, for your employees' salaries, bonuses, and equity. So this is something to really pay attention to big time. Now, if you are trying to build your founding team, and we've talked about senior management, the rank and files, the middle level management. We got to talk about the top of the top, like oversight of the business. So that's your board of directors, and that's really important, because the kind of directors you attract to your startup says a lot about the stature and stage of your startup. Okay, because some directors do not want to be associated with brand new companies. They'll wait a little bit to see traction before associating themselves. Because see, when directors are coming to your firm, they are actually bringing their expertise, but also their reputation. They're bringing their network too, right? So this is really important to pay attention to that point, to that aspect of things. So after you incorporate your business, there are certain legal requirements to uphold. Okay, so for all corporations, the state of incorporation dictates board of directors requirements. So although a private LLCs do not have the same requirements, some choose to create a board of director after incorporating. So that's kind of cool. And you also have investors. So if you're trying to build your founding team, think about investors also from the get go. So investors actually are bringing not just money, they're bringing expertise too. And they're bringing also their networks. Okay. So, startup founding can come from many sources, including angels, accelerators, crowdfunding investors, venture capitalists, corporate and institutional investors, actually. So, different types of investors invest at different stages of company development and have different risk profiles and expectations about their involvement in the company, actually. So, as an early stage startup founder, the partners you bring into your business and the tenor of the relationships you build with them are often more important than the name recognition, actually, of the venture capital firms they work for. Okay. So this is important to actually associate, not just associate, let's just say to correlate, yeah, correlate your investors with the kind of stage you're at and also the vision that you have. Sometimes joining an accelerator or incubator can provide a valuable mentorship from experienced entrepreneurs and industry experts, as well as access to potential investors and a supportive community. So finally, let's talk about employees. So that's actually your staff, right? Those people who are working, who will work every day to sustain your business, the your startup. Those talented individuals who have chosen to join your team, who have chosen to join your company, and who you have attracted, but also incentivized to your firm, right? So this is important because employees actually are in they come in several stages. You have early employees, you have what I call mid-level, like transition employees, and employees who join the firm once the firm has proven its economic model has gained traction a lot. Okay, so early employees actually are the last, but hardly the least important members of your startup's founding team. And this is it's important because building actually a good team, similar to building a successful company, can take years, right? Again, going back to what I told you about Amazon, for instance, think about the early employees at Amazon, okay? But investing in talent from the beginning can pay off for your startup in the big picture. So even if, let's say, your company is not turning a profit in the early days, you can incorporate hardworking contribution, or let's say hardworking contributors, okay? You can compensate them with non-cash incentives like equity and stock options that vest over time. So they can vest over 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, for instance. And owning equity in a company can align equity holders with the overall prosperity of your growing business. And the ability to own equity can be an incentive to join a company, stay at the company for longer, and feel more invested in the company's success, right? Think about all those startups that have become unicorns, and think about how much their employees will actually unlock in capital once the company files for an IPO. Imagine that. Company files for an IPO, those employees who actually maybe got the equity shares for free, now they can sell it at the market price, or they can choose to hold it. I mean, to hold off of on those equity shares. So, if for instance you got 1,000, if one employee got 1,000 equity shares for at $0, like at no price, and the stock is now trading at the $100 per share, that's $100,000. Okay, so that's really important to really incentivize the right employees. So, as a coda into this conversation, I spoke to you about building your founding team, and I actually talked to you about all the employees that are important, from founder and co-founder to C-suite members, but also to the board of directors, investors, and employees. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.